Jon, welcome to the debut edition of the War of the Words TV. An absolute pleasure to have you here on this very first edition of the show. And who better to do it with than you, Glory CEO, MMA Plus and Glory have had a fruitful relationship together. So it's a great way to start the new series.
Well, well, thank you for having me. I feel honored to be the first guest. So it's a debut of a new show, and always a pleasure to be with you guys. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Great show in Glory 42. And right now we look at the company, we look at the organization, and it's going from strength to strength right now. But I just want to take the viewers back and really just get more of an insight on how it all began for you, because you haven't been with Glory since the beginning. Glory was founded in 2012. You came in June 2014, and it was a very different time in Glory at that time.
Came in this role later than that, in more like August, September 2014, after Glory took a break following Last Man Standing, which was a massive pay-per-view event that they tried in the United States. But before that, I actually was with Glory, but in a different capacity. I had my own company that sold TV rights in America, and I was working with TSA, one of the Glory partners, to help Glory get on CBS Sports Network and also Spike in the United States, and also bring it to other networks in the US. As in that role, I actually was at Glory 4 in Tokyo.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first show that we put on television in the United States was Glory 4. Another big, massive Glory event in front of a big crowd in Tokyo. But, at that time I had no idea of, what the structure of Glory was and who the main players in the business were and everything. I was basically brought in by Total Sports Asia, which was one of the Glory partners, to help with TV rights in the United States. I'd worked with them before on other projects, and we were able to accomplish what they were looking for at the time was to get on television in the U.S., but not only to get on television, to be on one of the CBS sports platforms. So the introduction really to Glory in the United States on television was on one of the major network platforms.
Yeah, it was a trying time at that period for Glory. They tried the Last Man Standing pay-per-view. It didn't quite work out for them. I think it was a bit too early for that pay-per-view period. What do you remember about that, and what do you remember about that time period for Glory?
Well, I don't know if too early is the right way of looking at it. If you have the right stars and the right sauce, the secret sauce that everyone tries to find for a pay-per-view, and the stars align, you can sell a big pay-per-view no matter what position your business is in. You don't have to have an old business. You can have an old business and try a big pay-per-view and have it fail miserably, or you can have a new business and sign up Floyd Mayweather and it goes great. But they had some of the older stars that hadn't perhaps been exposed in America to the extent that they needed to be. There wasn't a compelling story at the time, and kickboxing in America just, I think at that point, wasn't to the level that needed to be to sell a pay-per-view. So, pay-per-views are sold on personality, and these characters that were in that show hadn't been developed to the point that people were willing to reach into their wallets and buy pay-per-view at the time. And some of the people consulting and within the organization looked at it as almost a formula. Hey, if we're getting this TV rating, there's going to be a certain percentage that are going to buy a pay-per-view. And it's more complex than that. It's not that simple that it's just a conversion ratio of what your television ratings are. You have to have more to it than that. Then also, if you look back, kickboxing has never made it into mainstream American culture. There's been some fits and starts with movies like Billy Jack and The Kickboxer, and a couple of compelling characters, Chuck Norris doing this or Jean-Claude Van Damme doing that. But on a regular basis, kickboxing had not made it. K1 had come over and tried some things in Las Vegas that didn't go that well. Some of the mainstream fighters like Ray Sefo at the time had come over and tried to box. They wanted, Ray wanted to fight Mike Tyson, and we worked with Ray and got him into the boxing ring, and it didn't go the way he had planned. So people were trying to promote kickboxing, trying to bring it to the next level, and then there was a lull.
Yes.
So fits and starts of kickboxing in America, and America was probably not quite ready for Last Man Standing.
Were you a fan during those Glory K1 days? You know, the highlight, the golden era of kickboxing.
Yeah, I mean, I paid attention to it, I'd say personally from, you know, the periphery. I was in the boxing business pretty significantly starting really in the mid-90s. I was working at IMG at the time. I was there for 15 years, from 1984 to 1999. And at least I understood the rules of boxing. And IMG at the time, this was way before they bought UFC, was really, you know, golf and tennis and skiing. And I worked in Olympic sports, so I followed boxing. There were a few times where, you know, a famous boxer would come to us and talk to us about TV shows or try and get us to represent their endorsement rights, because the cornerstone of the IMG business at the time, and I think still today, is athlete representation. And at that time, people within the organization would call me and say, you know, what do you think of this fighter, or whatever, you know, where do they fit into the scheme of things? So I was doing some stuff in boxing at IMG. But then when I left, I went to America Presents, which was a boxing promotional company. And the idea at the time, they were more than that. They were really a boutique sports marketing company. But they represented Wayne McCullough, they represented David Tua. We signed David Reed coming out of the Atlanta Olympics. He was the only American gold medalist there. And we signed up a series with Fox on Sunday nights to do a Sunday night fight series. Fox Regional at the time was becoming more of a national network, so we had a nationally cleared time slot to put on, you know, 40 boxing events a year. In addition to special events and pay-per-views, we did David Reed versus Felix Trinidad. But really the marquee client we had at that time was Mike Tyson. So we promoted Mike Tyson fights from Francis Botha through Brian Nielsen in Copenhagen. Right. So we did 5 Tyson fights in an arrangement we had with, you know, Team Tyson at the time, and with Showtime and all that. So, you know, we were doing big fights and we were selling some pay-per-views, and, you know, I think we learned a little bit about what it takes to make a pay-per-view work and what it doesn't. And obviously with Mike Tyson, you had a compelling character. He was already out of prison at the time, and you know, hosting even some seminars within our organization. It's been like, okay, you know, here are all these things you can do to sell tickets and promotions that you can do in the marketplace. And when you've got a Mike Tyson or a, you know, Badr Hari or a Rico Verhoeven who's coming up, you don't have to do any of them. You just put the tickets on sale and they sell. So you put in a marketing budget and, oh wow, we're sold out. We don't even need to spend that money. But when you have characters that are not quite as well known, you've got to do all those things, because you've got to bring those fighters to the market. You've got to take them around. You've got to introduce people to them. You've got to create your fan base. When you've got a Mike Tyson, the fan base is there for you. When you've got bringing people up from the ground and new fighters, you have to show them to the public, and you have to start attracting a fan base for them. So it's a completely different cycle, if you will.
And I think you have to look at the track record of since you've come into Glory, and you look at these television deals. In 175 countries now, you've helped broker the deals with Ziggo, which is absolutely massive in the Netherlands, ESPN, after there was a period of insecurity in the United States for a television deal. And of course, as we mentioned there, the new media, the UFC Fight Pass. How important is it now that Glory, not only in 175 countries, up to 12 million audience, which Scott Rudman said in a recent interview, but having that benefit where, yes, you've got the TV deal, but we're also exploring the new avenues with UFC and UFC TV, like you did with Glory Collision, that potentially now Glory is ready for this change in thesis that, yeah, we are going online and more people are receiving and viewing their content online as well.
Well, I think you have to do all of them. You know, you have to take parts of your business and distribute them this way. You have to do it that way. You have to keep it mainstream. You have to still be affiliated with the networks. If you look at a business like ESPN, you know, at one point they were in over 100 million homes in America. And now with all the people cutting the cord and the cable and, you know, the millennials that figure out how to take the content in a different way. Like I said, I'm not sure they realize this. They're probably paying just as much, but it's more customized. Yes. You know, they're taking Formula One for $3 on Ziggo, and they're doing this and that. And, you know, if they were to add it all up, then maybe they just should be better off with cable getting everything. Who knows? But, you so ESPN has dropped from 100 million homes to 90 million or something like that. So they've gone from being the 800-pound gorilla to the 790-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
They're still delivering massive ratings. They're still getting out there. They're the #1 network, sports network in the world. And if you read Bloomberg or whatever, they still rate them as the #1 network in the world, not just sports network, as far as what they're delivering and what their audience is and what their share is and all that. So it's great to be on ESPN. But on the other side, you want to step into the modern world of distribution. And it's funny, we think ESPN is not the modern world anymore. They were a startup in 1981 or 82, and wow, 24-hour sports network, this is amazing. But that's history now. Things move so fast. But on the other side, we're on on UFC Fight Pass, which is really the cutting edge of the new over-the-top network. It's available anywhere in the world on the internet, on your tablet, on your phone. It's subscription-based. You pay a monthly fee and you get all this content. You get this library. They have live events, but they also have a non-linear library that you can go into it and pick shows out, and we're part of their library as well. But so you're delivering content that way. You're delivering live content on a subscription-based service. You're also on ESPN in 90 million homes or whatever they're in now. So you're trying to build your mass fan base from the top down, from ESPN, and then also from the bottom up with the the newest of the most modern content delivery systems, and experimenting with your own systems like that. So yeah, you mentioned we're in whatever Scott said, 175 countries, but there are also places we're not, and some of them are big. Like yesterday, you and I were talking about England, but you can get Fight Pass in England. You can get it anywhere in the world. In addition, we have our own pay-per-view platform that you can get in any of the areas that we call the dark areas where we don't have a national TV deal. So we're driving pay-per-view all the time around the world. If you live in a country, I know we're in so many countries, I hesitate to say a country that we're not in. So say England, because I know we're not on a national network deal there. So you can still see Glory there. You can see it on Fight Pass in our main numbered series. You can go to our website, click on it, pay a few dollars, and watch our numbered event anywhere in the world. And it's become, a very complex distribution map, because in some places, we're on a network, and then we're on OTT, and then we're on cable, and we're licensing the content this way and that way, and we're slicing it and dicing it, and this is a linear network, and this is a non-linear network. So you've got live rights, you've got live rights linear, you've got live rights digital, you've got live rights, non-linear, and so it's like, it's crazy. There's so many different ways to try and monetize the content now.
Earlier in the interview, we were speaking about Glory Last Man Standing, and you mentioned that the stars weren't quite there at that point and the way that it was being promoted. But we fast forward and we look at Glory Collision, and the same man that headlined that card, Rico Verhoeven, was the biggest talking point, as well as Badr, when you come into Glory Collision in December 2016, the king of kickboxing against the Golden Boy. What was different from those two periods with Rico Verhoeven?
Well, I think Rico has developed and become a more compelling character over the last couple of years, for sure. That was 3 years ago, and in the time between then and now, he's knocked out 12 people in a row, and he's come into his own, and he's gone from being the prince to the king, and all those sorts of things. So he's grown up, and he's grown up within Glory. So that's been pretty cool to have a star that's been created within the time period of our organization. And then, of course, Badr is the bad boy, and he was sort of fighting on the outside. K1, went into bankruptcy in Japan. There wasn't, a league or a tour for him. He was doing one-off fights here and there, but he was still, the last hangover of the end of the K1 era, of the really big fights. Sure, Semi Shilta's out there, but retired. Remy Bonowski's talking about, a comeback or whatever, but these are guys in their 40s. And yeah, they want the money, they want to come back and fight. Hey, I can take out that young guy. But at the end of the day, a lot of them aren't really fighting, and they are a bit aged. It's not the start of a new thing, it's going backwards. But Badr is still, a young man. He was fighting in that mix when he was 18, 19 years old, and they were in their late 20s and early 30s. So he's really the last guy from that era that could, challenge it. And it became, not because we were smart or anything, sort of old school versus new school. The athletes brought that up on their own. And it was true. So, you had this promotional angle, I think, that, interested a lot of people. What's going to happen, the old school guy versus the new school guy? And, that brought fans to it and got people excited about the fight. And as I said, about like the Tyson era, that then the fight sells itself. And it has to have an organic reason to interest people. And that fight did. It sold out a big arena. And Glory proved that when we have the right storylines and the things come together, the stars align. And I was talking about the stars in the sky, not particularly the stars on the ground, but I do like the analogy. The stars have to align too. The star meaning Rico, Verhoeven, and Badr, and it has to be the right time and the right era and the right everything. So, that one
we
did.
We saw his graduation basically.
Yeah, from Rico,
yeah,
from being, a kid to being a man, and from being prince to being king. And, standing there, and their characters are so different. You got
polarizing.
Yeah, polarizing. Badr is, sitting in jail right now, and then you've got Rico, who is, having cereal with his daughter, walking around in a field because it's quiet. So, it was, light versus dark or whatever. But, it caught the interest of the whole world. So people wanted to see that fight. And then it becomes very easy to be a promoter. I mean, nothing's easy, but, at least the fight sells itself. You don't have to go out and spend $5 million buying billboards and, all the things that you would need to do to promote a fight.
Was it the correct decision to put it behind a paywall? It's the biggest fight in Glory history, one of the biggest fights in kickboxing history, without question. I saw a lot of detractors about, the paywall being there, being on pay-per-view. Was it the right move?
Well, nobody likes to pay money for anything. I want stuff for free. I'm sure you want stuff for free. Free is my favorite price, But we actually didn't just have it on pay-per-view. And I think that was what was most interesting, and that's why Sports Business Journal did a big story about the fight. There were a couple of reasons. It was the first time UFC had done pay-per-view with anyone except their own organization. So that was a sports business story. But also, it was the fact that we weren't just on pay-per-view. We were, free to air. Sort of, like I said, there's so many different types of television now. But Ziggo is, on your cable system or whatever in Holland, but you have to pay a monthly subscription fee. So is it free to air? Not really. It's not like a big national network, but it does cover 60 or 70% of Holland. But we didn't want to leave it to that. We didn't want, we have an arrangement with Ziggo, but we didn't want to leave it there. We wanted everybody to be able to see the fight. We wanted to bring it to the most amount of people as possible, and that was why we did UFC.tv. So if you were in Holland and you weren't getting Ziggo, you weren't part of their package or however they work it up there, you could still get, like I said, we cover our dark territories for every fight with our own pay-per-view. So we had a pay-per-view application where anybody anywhere in the world could click on and watch the fight. But in the meantime, we were also free to air in a number of jurisdictions, number of areas. So we were on Ziggo in Holland, we were on, I don't even know them all again because we have so many different contracts, but in certain countries we were free to air with backfill from UFC.tv. We were getting rights fees in other places. Morocco, for example, Badr Hari's home country, we did a television deal. In Middle East, we had a television deal, and those are countries or places that don't have really deep internet penetration. So we did a free-to-air deal because we figured, number one, it's an expensive fight in an area where they don't have, people don't have a lot of money to spend on these things, but we still wanted to bring the fight to the area, so we do a TV deal for a rights fee. So we covered the entire globe with that fight, one way or another, between pay-per-view, national network deals, partially subscription-based deals, fight channels that paid for the rights for it, and we left the pay-per-view open to fill in again all the dark areas. So one way or another, we had everywhere in the world covered.
It was a global event. It was truly a global event. As you alluded to there earlier, Badr Hari currently serving jail time. But what I want to really focus on is what was different about this scenario, because there's been a history there of Glory when it comes to these talents who've grown up through the K1 era, like the Gokhan Sakis or the Tyrone Spungs. They've taken a really hard stance against Glory because the money that they were wanting wasn't being offered. But for Badr Hari, that was, and he accepted the terms. What was different there?
What was different there was, we knew it was a fight that would sell. Number two, both Rico and Badr accepted some risk and became our partners in that fight. And they said, okay, you know, if it sells, they can do very well. If it doesn't sell, we're going to, you know, share the risk. So it's part of the upside, part of the risk. It's a model that UFC does, you know, and it's a model that all the big pay-per-view companies do, and you make the athlete your partner, and they work harder. That's one thing. The rest, as we talked about a minute ago, the rest of the, you know, the hangover from the old kickboxing world, we're older and perhaps not as interesting of fights to the public. You know, Rico, who was left for Rico to fight? You know, is he going to fight a 45-year-old guy? Is he going to fight Peter Ernst, who's retired already for 3 times, you know, and come back? Well, it just wasn't as interesting. But the Badr Hari fight was certainly the interesting fight. You bring Tyrone Spong, well, we would love to bring Tyrone back, but he doesn't want to kickbox. Gokhan Saki, we offered numerous fights to. We have a contract with him, and again, he turned fights down. So, you know, he wasn't ready to come back to glory. Why was he fighting with us before? Well, I think, you know, we were paying him a lot of money, but we had to rationalize the cost of our fighter prize money as well. And I have to say, when I came in and we were renegotiating a lot of deals with these fighters, most of them were great. They understand that this has to work. Gokhan Saki ultimately signed a contract with us, and then, as I said, we were offering him fights, and he didn't accept the fights. So, you know, I think fighters look at MMA and look at the UFC and, you know, maybe see a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and, you know, they like the publicity, and, you know, it's a global brand just like we are. So everybody has to make their own choice where they want to go, how they want to do it. You know, we love Gokhan Saki. I actually, you know, had a half a day with him in Dubai when we were there for our fight, and you know, I felt like I had a nice relationship with him. Maybe he doesn't feel the same way, but you know, I felt like there was some common ground, and he ultimately did sign a contract with us. But then eventually, you know, in his mind, the right fights weren't offered or the right timing, you know, and then he was able to move on to something else. And he moved on to the UFC without fighting for 2 years. So
impressive.
Yeah, kudos to him. Yeah. You know, other guys have had to like fight their way into the UFC.
It's been quite difficult.
Yeah, he was able to do it on his own. So hey, admire the guy.
The question on everybody's lips is, especially after the end in the second round, Badr gets the injury from the kick or the knee of Rico Verhoeven. It wasn't the way that many people wanted to see it, and it was, you know, perhaps you could describe it as an anticlimax, but we lived in that moment. We didn't get it as long as we wanted. Are Glory actively pursuing this rematch? I know there's a lot of factors in this. Badr is in jail. Rico's doing a lot of stuff at the minute. But is it going to happen?
Well, I hope it's going to happen. You never say never, and you never say something's for sure until it actually happens. You know, somebody get injured in training the day before a fight, and you don't have the fight. So will it happen? Do we want it to happen? Yes, we want it to happen. Will it happen? I can't sit here with 100% certainty and say yes. It's the fight that the public wants, and if the athletes want it, you know, generally you can work it out and figure out a way to make it happen. So, you know, that would be our goal. At the time, both guys said, hey, we want a rematch, and this isn't how we wanted it to end. And Badr gave Rico some respect. Hey, you've grown up. And Rico said, hey, you know, he had a big smile on his face, pleasure to fight him. And then if you look at the scorecards of that fight, Rico actually, Badr won the first round. Yeah. So, in a lot of people's minds, and I'm not, you know, the athletic expert in our company. I haven't been in kickboxing training for 30 years, for 40 years, like some of the guys in our business. But, you know, I think the common fan, like myself, expected Badr to come out there and go crazy and, you know, really chase the knockout and all that. And instead, he went out, he fought a very, very, like, controlled fight. He knew what he was doing. He was picking his moments to, you know, kick and to punch and all that. So it was like a little bit different of a Badr Hari. He knew what would have happened by the third round and if things would have changed. But, you know, what at least a lot of the pundits expected didn't happen. You know, it was a calm, controlled fight, and Badr won the first round on points. You know, the scorecards, ISKA released the scorecards, and so it was, you know, it was an interesting fight in addition to an interesting build-up.
But has there been discussions between the parties?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. You know, we talk to everyone all the time. But, you know, there's a number of, as you pointed out, things that have to happen first. Yeah. But yeah, we would love to put that fight together, and we think we're the best organization to do it. And the guys agreed at the time that, you know, if something like this happened, there would be a rematch and all that. So, we want to go forward with that, at the right moment.
And looking ahead, as we just have done there, into the new era of Glory Kickboxing, you have established this very good, very strong European market. You're working very hard in the United States, and now you're expanding into China with the help of Yao Ming and Yao Capital with the new investment deal. For you, looking now that there are these free markets there for you, and looking at the track record, that there has been a bit of struggle in the United States to get that traction for Glory and to sell those tickets. Does that effectively put the United States down in the poll when you compare it to China and Europe?
Well, every day is a new day. And if you look at what's going on in the United States, our ticket sales numbers are increasing dramatically. So we go back to Chicago. We've been there 3 times. We're up, over 100% from the first time, and actually up 60% between our second visit and our third visit in the same place. So when we come back time and time again, we're building more of a fan base. Same thing in Los Angeles. So our strategy now is to stay in the core markets that we've gone to, and we built a fan base. LA, we were up 25, 30%. Even in Denver, we were up when we came back. So we've shown that if you come back time and time again, the graph is undeniable. The ticket sales increases are real, they're undeniable. We're doing better and better every time. Are we going to be able to do it fast enough? I don't know. If you look at Chicago as an example, it's becoming a bit logarithmic. You're up like 10%, then you're up like 20%, and all of a sudden you're up 60%. So, we're excited, and we're going back to Chicago, and we're going to go to a bigger place, and we'll see what the next step is. But yeah, it's a sport that's been trying to crack it in America, as you Brits say, for 25 years. And like I said, there's been little bits of success, and there's been some hard times as well. In Europe, well, yeah, you've got a fight like Badr Rico. You sell out a big building, 12,000 seats. It's the talk of the whole world. So that's great. But we've had some shows in Europe too. I hate to say it, but the truth is, you've been to them that weren't as crowded as we would have liked, and they weren't in as big of halls. And you go to Holland, where it's a #1 sport, and you think, oh, it's going to be easy to sell stuff out, and you still need to make good fights, and you need to be at the right time, and people have lots of choices for entertainment, so you've got to do a good job delivering a great show, or people go and spend their entertainment dollars elsewhere. So yeah, we're building in America, like I said before, from the bottom up and from the top down, and we're maintaining and also trying to build in Europe. And now we're entering China, and that was really the start of your question. You mentioned all 3 markets, but I started with America, went to Europe, and now we're going into China. We've got, as everyone knows, an investor from China, Yao Capital, which is Yao Ming's company. And who better than to launch in China than with Yao Ming, who could be the most famous athlete ever to come out of China, and he's a partner of ours. So we're being strategic about it, and we're taking our time, and we're not just diving into the market. We want to be in the right place with the right athletes. We're bringing some Chinese athletes to fight in Europe and in America for Glory, and then we're going to at the right moment step into China with what we hope is a viable plan.
Commercially, what's the potential there? How important is it for the growth?
As a global brand, I think in the modern world, it's important to be everywhere, and we are a global brand, so it's important to go in with Yao and do it in big cities and big markets. Yeah, it's important. The ticket prices are not as high as Holland or New York. We've got to develop some athletes and make them into stars, but it's really starting from the bottom up there. But we've had TV contracts, and we've got the most famous athlete in the world on our side. So we think we're starting the right way.
Let's say that in a year's time we sit down once again and we have the same discussion. What's going to be different about Glory in a year's time? What do you foresee the major changes that the organization is going to go through in the next 12 months?
Well, you don't know where you're going to end up, but you know where you're trying to go. So we need to, for sure, build some stars. We need to have compelling and attractive characters that people want to see. And some of that has to happen organically. You can't take a really exciting personality who can't fight and turn him into a fighter. That has to happen. They have to desire the heart, all the things that go into making a great fighter. And oftentimes it's hard to take a great fighter and turn them around into making them a compelling character. So you need, some of that to happen by itself. But then you also have to capitalize on it. And you have to, when you've got that personality, you have to bring them up at the right rate. When I was at America Presents, we had David Reed, who I mentioned, who was the Olympic gold medalist, and we fought him through a number of fighters to ultimately a big pay-per-view with Felix Trinidad. And we had a lot of criticism that we had brought him up too fast, that he didn't have the right experience, didn't have the right time. We were vindicated somewhat because he was the first guy to knock down Felix Trinidad. He went to the distance in that fight. It was, a great moment in sports and the history of boxing and all that. But ultimately he took a beating, and people still argue, oh, you did it too early, you did it too late. So yeah, it's a question of balance. How do we maintain the right steps with the right fighters and not feed a guy who might turn into your big star to the lions too early, but also not, take it someone who maybe could develop a personality and, get rid of them at the wrong time. You got to really work hard to determine what the steps are, the proper steps athletically, the proper steps marketing-wise, the proper steps now with social media, with television, with media training and all that. But at the end of the day, you need great athletes that are also great personalities. Or maybe there's a way to build one to be the anti-personality. I don't know. But then he's got to be a great athlete. You got to get killers in there that knock people out, that get fans really excited.
I think the blueprint's definitely there if you look at Rico, Verhoeven, or the anti-personality in Badr, and I can see that Glory definitely making efforts to grow the new stars of tomorrow. I think Cedric Doumbé is one. There's a high lot of potential
great
there.
Star, yeah, but if he went and got himself knocked out every time, there would be no interest. But he has fun when he's out there, and he's smiling, and his energy sort of permeates the fans and everyone in the room, and they want to see this guy, And there are guys, we've had some top 10 knockouts on SportsCenter that have gone viral and all that. And, maybe not from famous guys, but then they become famous. A fan says, oh, wait, I saw that guy on SportsCenter knock that guy out. That was amazing, So you can take some of these guys that you might not think are going to be the greatest spokespeople, but hey, they're great athletically. And they're getting a fan base. So I saw that guy, I want to see him again. So, there's two sides to everything. But you've really, as I said, the stars have to align. You have to hit it on all cylinders and, get the guys out there. You've got to do your job. They've got to do their job. And if everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing and working hard, we'll have success.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground there from your beginnings and the state of Glory at the minute, which is definitely positive from what I can take from
Yeah, we're moving in the right direction. We're selling more tickets. Sponsors are getting more interested. They know that we're going to be around and we're viable, and they see things working out. So, if you're a sponsor and you're not sure whether Glory's going to be around next year, you're not going to take a chance. But when they see companies like Liberty Global and Yao Capital and some of the partners and investors that we have, they're not worried about the future of Glory. And now we're in a position where we can, bring them on board and close that last loop. We're selling more and more tickets. We've got more and more TV deals. We're monetizing our content in more ways every day. And now we got to bring those big sponsors on as well. But we're in a position where we can deliver that properly for a big sponsor. So we get all three areas covered like we need to: ticket sales, television, just, like the 1960s Mark McCormick at, what they don't teach you at Harvard Business School. You need all multiple sources of revenue. And we're finally in a position where we can do that. We can't do it without the athletes. We can't do it without the fans. We can't do it without, the people in the office all working hard. But we're in that position right now. We've got great athletes coming up. We've got great fans. We've got good TV contracts. We're in a position to really move forward in a positive way.
Well, Mr. Jon Franklin, the Glory CEO, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. And for you, I've learned a lot about you, and I think the audience will really appreciate that. A new insight not only into Glory, but into the man behind it as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I love it when you come to the events, sitting and talking to you, finding out what's going on everywhere. And, I love the fact that you're doing shows like this to help build combat sports and, build our brand, but everyone else's brand as well.
Well, I think it's a perfect start to the new War of the Words TV series, and hopefully we go from strength to strength, and maybe, who knows, as I said, in a year's time we'll sit down and Glory will be even bigger then as well.
Well, hopefully before that.
Hopefully before that, of course. Jon, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.